friends, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and I'm here with a rundown of what happened on this week's Monday Night Raw. Now I should be clear why we're doing this. Basically, Ross is away this week and rather than try and fill his considerable shoes and do WTF moments, we thought I'd just give you more of a simple rundown of Raw because we feel like you still deserve to know what happened, you know? You know guys? You know? So yeah, Ross is probably at the zoo or something. Ha! Funny. Fun. So this week's Raw came from St. Louis, Missouri, and basically it was kind of a go-home show for the Greatest Royal Rumble, which of course takes place on Friday on the WWE Network at I think about 5 PM for UK viewers. This is brilliant. This is how it should be all the time. We get to finish work, crack open a few beers, have a little watch of the Greatest Royal Rumble. It's going to be magical. Don't have to stay up really late. We can go out afterwards. We can go out on the town, having watched a 50-man Royal Rumble. I'm so happy, but this was kind of a go-home show for that Greatest Royal Rumble on Friday from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and as such, not a great deal happened in terms of big storyline developments, but a few little things happened and a few new feuds were set up, which I think are probably quite key to mention. So let's crack straight on with all that happened on this week's Monday Night Raw. Now we started with the traditional 10-bell salute for Bruno Sammartino, who sadly passed away last week. This was a very touching moment. Obviously, a lot of the roster were on stage. The majority, I think, of the roster were on stage, as well as Vince McMahon. A lot of them wearing black t-shirts in tribute to Bruno Sammartino, one of the true pioneers of WWE's history, and a man who I think, without whom wrestling would look entirely different, and probably for the worse as well. He really helped to improve the business, bring it forward into the late 20th century, and was just a mega star and one of the greatest WWE champions of all time. So it was a fitting tribute to Bruno. We also had a nice video package as well, and it was, although like a somber way to start off the show, I think it was a very appropriate one indeed. Next up, the show kind of started off properly with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman taking to the ring and gloating about Lesnar's victory at WrestleMania 34, where of course he retained the Universal Championship against the big dog, Roman Reigns. They talked for a bit, well, Heyman talked for a bit while Brock did his thing and collected his presumably monstrous paycheck, and Heyman said, you know what, we don't live in the past, we're looking ahead to that cage match rematch at the Greatest Royal Rumble, and he said, you know what, without a doubt Lesnar's going to win that too, and we will beat Roman Reigns once again. And then Roman got involved for a little bit. He came to the ring and said, no, I'm going to win, and that was pretty much it. I guess this was an okay segment. You know, Heyman's one of the most charismatic men in the business today, and I have no complaints with regards to like what this did for the development of the storyline. It didn't really develop it too much, but at the same time, it didn't impact it in a negative way either. So a little bit of a neutral way to start the show, but I don't really have much more to say about it. It was what it was. I should also take this moment to point out that there was a particular sign on Monday Night Raw, some cheeky devil in the crowd. Well, first of all, I should point out, right, that yes, they brought a Cultaholic sign to Raw, and we greatly appreciate that. We love when you guys take signs to live events. It makes us feel really important and really valued in the wrestling industry. But at the same time, if you're going to take a sign to Monday Night Raw, please do not include the slogan #Jack's got a stiffy. It gives the wrong impression of me. What if my mother was to watch that? She doesn't, she despises wrestling, but what if she was to tune in to Monday Night Raw and sees a sign proclaiming that her son has a stiffy? Absolutely appalling behaviour. Thank you for taking the sign. I hate you at the same time. He made it, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but they made it lime green as well, so it really caught the attention of everybody. There was a Simon Miller sign too. Big up Simon Miller, let my people go. Next up, we had Elias, who came out and did his standard sort of promo where he, you know, rinses the crowd and says, "Ew, you live in a disgusting town." But then he was cut. No, I like Elias. I've really dumbed him down there. But he was cut off by Bobbington Roode, who of course transferred over recently from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw as part of the Superstar Shakeup. This led to a match between the two and presumably a feud going on into the future. I'm going to call it a bit of a surprise, I think. In a sort of a surprise result, Elias picked up the win with a handful of tights and a roll-up and all that sort of heelish behaviour. And the match was a slow-paced one. It was conducted at quite a slow pace, and it didn't set the world alight. And at the same time, I felt a bit sad watching this because it really demonstrated to me how far Bobby Roode's fallen since his glorious days as NXT champion. Obviously, when he debuted on the main roster, he turned face, and although there was that initial surge of popularity, it dissipated pretty quickly. I think he's far better suited to being a heel. But you know what? Hopefully this feud with Elias, if it does turn into a feud, really is the first step on his road to recovery. I'd quite like that. But also a big win for Elias, considering the last time we saw him do anything of note, it was trolling John Cena at WrestleMania and getting absolutely battered for it. So a good win for Elias and a disappointing loss for Bobby Roode. I'd like to point out though, if we do get a cover, Elias doing a cover of the Glorious theme tune, I will forgive a lot of this. I really want to see him do that. So that would save it for me. Next up, a pretty straightforward heel versus babyface tag team match between the new team of Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt and the Ascension, who also recently came over to Monday Night Raw, and Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt won in just a few minutes. No complaints here. Yes, I feel bad for the Ascension, but at least they're wrestling again. You know, there's swings and roundabouts. But Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt really needed the win here, and they did pick it up as they head into their tag title match for the vacant Raw Tag Team Championships at the Greatest Royal Rumble against The Bar. Matt and Bray are surely going to win, aren't they, at the Greatest Royal Rumble? I'd say so. I'd put money on it. Not a lot of money, a little bit. Pocket change. Next up, a very interesting development indeed. Because The Miz is now over on SmackDown again, we have a new talk show on Monday Night Raw, and it's called the Sami and Kevin Show. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens came out really obnoxiously and hilariously, as they do, as they excel at doing. They got in the ring and they mocked their first guest before he came out. It was, of course, the Raw general manager, Kurt Angle. He hit the ring and they provided him with a really terrible, like, fold-out garden chair for him to sit on. It was too small for him. I like it. You know what? Kevin and Sami are two of the most talented wrestlers in WWE, but as long as they keep wrestling, I'm totally fine with them having a talk show as well. It helped The Miz, and it hopefully helps those guys as well. They continued to mock Kurt as he sat in the ring with them, and they said things like, wow, you must really need your job on Monday Night Raw because you've got, what, 5 kids? No way, you've got 6 kids. We forgot about Jason Jordan. Everyone forgot about Jason Jordan. It was... Oh, it's part of the reason the internet loves Kevin and Sami. They are sometimes a little bit smarky, a little bit meta, and I did quite enjoy that quite a lot. And it did remind me also that Jason Jordan is a thing and is Kurt Angle's son. But you know, hopefully once he's recovered from injury, he'll be back and a relevant part of storylines once again. Now, Kurt didn't take too kindly to their comments. Of course he didn't. They were mean to him. They were quite nasty to him. However, he did get a measure of revenge because he said, you know what, guys, I'm going to enter you in the Greatest Royal Rumble on Friday in Saudi Arabia. But you know what? Guess who else is in that match? Myself, Kurt Angle's in the match. Not me. I'm not Jack the Jobber. I'm not in the match. I don't participate in Rumbles. Who do I think I am? Adam Pacitti? God. Angle said that he would be in the match. He also said that Daniel Bryan would be in the match, a man who again has beef with Owens and Zayn. And he said that Chris Jericho would be in the match as well, a man who was betrayed horribly by Kevin Owens in the Festival of Friendship. Interestingly, Angle mentioned Jericho as though he was just any other member of the roster rather than someone who very seldom shows up these days. So that was interesting how WWE kind of view Jericho, or view our perception of Jericho. As we know, he spent a lot of time, or a little bit of time, over in New Japan setting the wrestling world on fire, and then came back for the 25th anniversary of Raw, and has since, I believe, been on tour with Fozzy. So they're kind of just brushing it under the carpet and acting as though Jericho had never really left, which I understand to a degree. Next, we headed backstage where Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel were trying to convince Seth Rollins to let them be his new boys. They need a leader, like the T-Birds at the end of Grease when Danny's like, you guys can't follow a leader all your life, and they're like, oh, but Danny, oh no. Oh man, oh no. Rollins then said, guys, it's a hard no, and just wandered off screen and just left them, and that was it. They couldn't find a leader. They'd try again, though, later on in the show. Next up, we had Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, recently called up once again to the main roster. His second stint on WWE's main roster, but one that's been far removed from his previous stint, which was about a decade ago now. Drew's done really well to get his career back on track in the Indies, really reinvent himself and come back stronger than ever. He had that NXT title reign, of course, as well. And they won this match pretty handily. They've been compared to Shawn Michaels and Diesel in a way, you know, with Ziggler being the Michaels, the athletic, show-stealing, floppy-selling man, and Drew the muscle as well. So it's a flattering comparison, but one which doesn't do them any harm at all. I think, you know, obviously they're nowhere near as over as those guys were back in the 90s, but at the same time, it could really help them out. Drew could really help Ziggler out. I think Ziggler is more in need of help than Drew is right now, and I reckon this could lead to a feud between the two in the future. Their opponents were Titus, World Wyatt, Titus O'Neil, and Apollo Crews. Is Akira Tozawa still a member of Titus World Wyatt? I'm not too sure, actually. Maybe he is. Someone could tweet him to ask, please. But Ziggler and McIntyre won. It was essentially a squash. They won in a couple of minutes, and then they got on the mic afterwards and pretty much hyped themselves up. And I'm pretty interested to see where this angle goes. Next up, Chad Gable met with Kurt Angle backstage and asked after Jason Jordan, his old tag team partner of course, and said, how's Jason doing? Kurt Angle said he's going to be fine, his recovery's going really well, but, and I really like this, he went, but I didn't bring you over to Raw to be a tag team superstar, I brought you to be a single superstar, and I'm going to give you a match tonight. Then Jinder Mahal showed up and laughed at Chad Gable for being short. It's very cruel indeed. He said, oh, aren't you that little boy who won the Raw Tag Team Championship at WrestleMania? I like that joke. And then he said, aren't you mini-me? Oh no, wait, I thought he died last week, which I didn't like. I thought that was out of nowhere. It was a bit like, bang, like, whoa, where did that come from? It was a little light-hearted, mocking heel promo, and then he just came out with a joke about a dead guy. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. It was shocking. The match itself came afterwards, Jinder Mahal versus Chad Gable, and Jinder dominated most of the match. On commentary, they really played up the fact that Gable's a lot smaller than Jinder, so he was the underdog. Gable took a lot of punishment, but picked up a huge victory. He did the old Bret Hart spot where Jinder went for the collapse, but then Gable ran up to the middle rope and sort of backflipped off into a pinning predicament, and Jinder didn't let go of his own hold in time and suffered the pinfall. It was a nice old school finish and a big win for Chad Gable. I reckon he was the big winner of the whole show. Really excited for him because he's truly one of the most talented pound for pound guys on the WWE roster, I want to say. He's an insanely good wrestler. I just didn't know if WWE believed in him or not, and it turns out they might well do. At the same time, this was pretty bad for Jinder, a pretty bad loss, especially given the fact that he has a US title rematch with Jeff Hardy at the Greatest Royal Rumble, a match which I'm like 99% certain he's gonna lose. Next up, we headed to the backstage area once again, where Renee Young was interviewing the Riott squad. Ruby Riott did most of the talking, if not all of the talking, which I guess is a wise move. She is the best promo of the three. And she basically revealed that they're going to be in the main event, a big 5-on-5 women's tag match, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. Next up, back again to those cheeky chappies, Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, who once again were trying to find a leader like the T-Birds in Greece. Oh, Danny, come on, Danny. This time they went after Finn Balor, who wears a leather jacket, just like the T-Birds in Greece. And he basically also did what Seth Rollins did earlier in the show and just said, lads, you're having a laugh. Get out of my dressing room immediately. Get out. Get away from here. You bastards. That's what he said. Not word for word, I'm paraphrasing quite heavily. Next up, a match which Kurt Angle booked in retaliation to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn being mean to him. It was Owens and Zayn versus the monstrous babyface team of Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman. This was, I think, the best match on the show. It went over 10 minutes, it was really full of action and frantic and pretty good television match. Owens and Zayn lost the match, as you might expect, against two humongous dudes. But interestingly, the most interesting thing I found about this match was that Braun Strowman was very much the main guy in his tag team. Like, Bobby Lashley is obviously important to WWE, having recently returned from Impact Wrestling, but at the same time, the crowd are in love with Braun Strowman. His star just continues to rise, and I mean, he had all the key moments in the match. He was the hot tag, he picked up the pinfall at the end with his big power slam on Sami Zayn, and I just really, he's a guy who's constantly exciting. And it's not even a new thing to point out. He has been now for about a year, maybe a little bit over. He's been really, really good and was truly the breakout star of last year. And it's just, his momentum's just continuing, and I couldn't be happier about it. Next up, maybe the weakest segment of the show for me, or at least the one that was the weirdest, basically. No Way Jose came out, having recently been called up from NXT. A lot of people are worried about No Way Jose. They say, ooh, isn't he just the same as Adam Rose? And he kind of is a little bit. He's got his dancers and stuff. His scheduled opponent was Baron Corbin, but the Lone Wolf was having none of it. He came out and said, no, I don't want to wrestle you. Your dancers are going to jump me. I want your dancers to be sent to the back. And No Way Jose responded in the only way he knows how, by dancing. He loves a bit of a dance. He did a bit of a dance. He was loving it. Corbin went away. No Way Jose danced up the ramp and, you know, sort of continued to party in his sort of mindless fashion. And then Corbin jumped him from behind and just beat him down on the ramp. And the dancers did absolutely nothing to help their boy. Every single one of you, you are cowards. I know that Baron Corbin's a big dude, but there's about 15 of you, and you could have all jumped him at the same time. And I was quite cross at the dancers, and I felt quite bad for No Way Jose for being snaked by his supposed friends. Next up, we had a video promo from Alexa Bliss, who basically gave an anti-bullying announcement, very ironic considering that she was bullying Nia Jax about her weight in the lead up to their match at WrestleMania 34. In this video, she basically said that Nia Jax stole food from a starving old woman, and that she's a bully, and that no one should follow her example and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I get the point of this. It's to sell that Alexa is really afraid of Nia Jax and she doesn't want to, she doesn't want anyone to be on her side. She wants to get allies against Nia and she wants to throw Nia off so she can win back the Raw Women's Championship. It all makes logical sense. But at the same time, I just kind of wish, I'm in two minds about this. On one hand, I wish they would drop the bullying angle. I felt like it was a bit distasteful in the build-up to WrestleMania. I'm glad that Nia Jax won. I felt that she should have won in maybe a minute or two, but, at least she won. But I just feel like they should probably have dropped that angle. But on the other hand, if any heel on the WWE roster can justifiably carry out this whole pretending to be a victim thing when you're actually the bully, it's Alexa Bliss. She's the best at it. So I'm in two minds, because on one hand I find it a little bit, ugh, what are you doing? But on the other hand, it helps show off Alexa's charisma, I guess. So if they could just tweak it slightly and tweak some elements of it a little bit to make it a bit more modern, then I'd be all in favour of it. But I'm not currently. I can't get fully behind it right now. Next up, Seth Rollins and Finn Balor versus the Miztourage, still called the Miztourage when they made their entrance, which I found very interesting indeed. Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, they came out to the Miz's music and everything, which I guess is just a sign that they haven't found anything new for them right now. But it was particularly strange given that just a week ago, I think, Dallas and Axel turned on the Miz and jumped off the apron when he was going to tag them in. So I was a bit surprised at this. But it was a good match anyway. Rollins and Balor won, which was predictable. And I guess that was the story of this show generally. Like, there were a lot of matches that were kind of fun, but kind of short-lived and predictable at the same time. And finally, the main event, a 5-on-5 tag team match between pretty much all the key figures in the Raw Women's division. On the babyface side, we had the Raw Women's Champion, Nia Jax. We had Sasha Banks and Bayley, who looked a bit uneasy to be around each other still. Good continuity there. Although nothing too specific happened in the match. There were no major developments, is what I'm trying to say. Ember Moon, who has all the momentum right now coming up from NXT, and of course Natalya as well, who recently turned face and reignited, I guess, or brought onto the screen her friendship, her real-life friendship with Ronda Rousey. On the heel team, we had the three members of the Riott Squad, Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan, Liv Morgan, and Alexa Bliss and her BFF, Mickie James. The match was quite long. It was the longest match on the show, I'd guess. And it was okay, pretty decent match, but it had a bit of a strange finish, which I will explain right now. Basically, as the match wore on, Natalya took a bump off the apron and appeared to have legitimately injured herself on the outside. It looked like she'd actually hurt her leg. Do not fear, it was all a work, you little marks. You've been worked. I was worked. We're all marks. We're all disgusting marks. Nia Jax took out pretty much everyone in the match with a big splash off the apron, but Mickie James didn't get caught in the crossfire. She dashed around the ring, started laying in the boots and beating up Natalya, focusing on that injured leg. That was the moment when I thought, hang on, this injury can't be real if she's actually focusing on it. Then Ronda Rousey's music hit and she charged out to defend her mate, beat up Mickie James, locked her into one of those heinous arm bars. Ronda's so good at locking on those arm bars, as she should be. She was like renowned as the master of the arm bar over in the UFC, but she's really carried that on into wrestling and really makes it look convincing, I guess, without doing any real damage, which is what a professional wrestler should do. On the negative side, it made the match not finish properly. It gave it a weird finish. The heel team actually won by DQ. But the real story here, I think, was that Rousey looks to be moving into a feud with Mickie James. And, her friendship with Natalya looks to be a real thing that they're going to carry on in storylines. It's very wise from WWE pairing Ronda with Mickie James and Natalya, two of the most experienced women on the roster right now. And hopefully they'll be able to aid her development as she progresses. She's got all the natural talent for it, she's got all the flair for it. It's just a question of how quickly she'll manage to make it second nature, how comfortable she'll become. And I'd hazard a guess, and say that she could probably do it in very quick fashion indeed. So that's it for this show. That's what happened on this week's Monday Night Raw from St. Louis, Missouri. And there's not much more to say. Thank you very much for watching. Ross will be back next week for WTF Moments. Normal service will be resumed very shortly. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. And make sure as well to check out our Patreon if you want. Patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, obviously, ovs, to join us.